Is coming, only on the BBC.
The Tea Time News now here on BBC One with Tina Daheley.
Polls close in Turkey in one of the country's most critical presidential elections. President Erdogan is facing his biggest challenge from the leading opposition candidate after 20 years in power.
Counting is now underway in one of the most momentous and most uncertain elections in Turkey's recent history, and the fate of Recep Tayyip Erdogan is hanging in the balance.
Also on the programme, a powerful cyclone hits coastal areas of Bangladesh and northern Myanmar with winds of 120 miles an hour. The most watched Eurovision final ever, a fitting legacy for hosts Liverpool. And it's a fifth Women's FA Cup for Chelsea and their third in a row. Good evening. Counting has begun in one of Turkey's most critical elections, which will decide if President Erdogan should remain in power after 20 years. President Erdogan faces his biggest challenge yet, with Turkey in the midst of soaring inflation and the country still reeling from two earthquakes in February, in which more than 50,000 people died. Recep Tayyip Erdogan came to power as Prime Minister in 2003 and has been president since 2014. His party has Islamist roots and despite strong support, he relies on backing from the Nationalist Movement Party and other smaller groups. Well, his main rival is Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, who is backed by a broad opposition alliance and has promised to scrap many of the powers acquired by the president. Our senior international correspondent Orla Guerin reports from the Turkish capital, Ankara.
A tense moment in a tight election. Here in Ankara, voters spotted two people in one polling booth. The police were called in. The ballot box matters in Turkey, and the opposition are on the lookout for fraud. This is a pivotal vote, which could mean the end of the Erdogan era. Turkey's authoritarian leader voted in Istanbul, looking sombre, with election officials standing to attention. He said he is praying for Turkish democracy. The president's smiling secular rival, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, says democracy would be a lot better off without him. Well, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu has emerged here now, having cast his vote. Everyone's trying to get a picture. He's the focus of a lot of attention here today, a lot of hopes. He's promising to bring a new beginning, to bring spring to Turkey. And waiting for him patiently for hours, three generations of one family who hope today will change everything. They brought baby Mira along, outside her home for the first time ever.
Ben şu an konuşuyorum, röportaj veriyorum ve korkuyorum.
I don't want to be afraid when I speak, says her aunt Sanem. Now I'm giving you an interview and I'm scared. I simply want to live without fear. We have been silent for so long. But President Erdogan has been pulling out all the stops to survive, invoking religion, as he often does. Last night he prayed for his political life in Istanbul's iconic Hagia Sophia, which he reconverted to a mosque. And a huge crowd prayed with him. Win or lose for President Erdogan, some have fears about what may come next.
We are concerned a little bit what may happen both ways. If he's elected, we don't see a good future for the country. And if he is not, things may get messier. So we will wait and see what happens.
We don't want mess. We want to be happy with our children, and we want to live happily in this country. We love our country.
Exactly.
Their country is now at a crossroads. If neither candidate gets more than 50% of the vote, Turks will be back at the polling stations in 2 weeks.
Apologies, we're having technical problems there. We couldn't hear from Orla Guerin, our senior international correspondent in Ankara in Turkey. Moving on for now, a powerful cyclone has hit the coastal areas of Bangladesh and northern Myanmar, forcing thousands of people to flee their homes to safer areas. Around 1 million Rohingya refugees are living in flimsy camps around the city of Cox's Bazar. 1,300 of those shelters have been damaged. Rajini Vaidyanathan is in Cox's Bazar and has the latest.
Cyclone Mocha arrived with force. Winds gusting at high speed as it moved towards the Bangladesh-Myanmar coastline. Hundreds of thousands of families forced to leave their homes for safety.
Well, this school is just one of the temporary cyclone shelters which the government has urged people to come to for safety. We'll just take you in. This is one of the classrooms. All of the classrooms in this school are absolutely packed with families. Many of them are mothers with tiny babies. There's the elderly here. Many people have come here and they're sick. There's real desperation in this room, though, because people say that there's no food here and they're in very uncomfortable conditions.
And while many were able to seek shelter, close to 1 million Rohingyas living in the world's largest refugee camp were not. The Bangladesh government doesn't allow refugees to leave the camp. Stuck in their shelters, made of bamboo and tarpaulin, with little protection from the storm. As the cyclone passes, the threat of flash floods and landslides remains. Extreme weather once again pummelling this coastline and leaving hundreds of thousands at risk. Rajini Vaidyanathan, BBC News, Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh.
Tens of thousands of households in West Sussex are without water after a failure at a supply plant. Water's being delivered to vulnerable customers and a bottled water station has been set up in Billingshurst. Southern Water said it had shut down the site at Hardham when low levels of chlorine were detected. Last night's Eurovision Song Contest was the most watched grand final in the competition's history, with a peak audience of 11 million viewers watching on BBC One. Bookies' favourite Loreen of Sweden made history by becoming the first woman to win the contest twice. Our culture editor Katie Razzle reports now on the legacy left for the host city Liverpool.
243 points! We have a winner! Sweden! You have won!
That was last night and a triumph for Loreen. Now for a monumental clear-up. The sequins, the weird and wonderful outfits are gone, but the memories will last.
Here we come.
Here we go. For Henry, a student at Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts, and recent graduate Isabel.
Oh, there we are. There she is. Ah, that's mental.
They're somewhere on that stage dancing with Ukraine's Kalush Orchestra, opening last night's final.
Were your family watching?
Yeah, of course.
My mother was watching. She did think I was somebody else to begin with. When we were dancing, I didn't care if you could see me. I didn't care at all because it was just unreal just to do it.
And I was like, wow, like I actually performed in the same show as all these like incredible artists.
Sweden's soaring pop anthem won on the night. But the UK's Mae Muller came second last. In a competition full of powerful female acts, her catchy, sarcastic track just didn't resonate with voters around the world. A painful end for an artist who's been a great ambassador for the contest.
That's the lovely bit, and then there's the not so lovely bit of the votes. But that's Eurovision. But I think it was a great night overall.
Mae Muller couldn't find the right notes to woo global audiences last night. In contrast, Liverpool was pitch perfect.
Ukrainians are extremely proud and grateful and thankful to the people of the United Kingdom. The city is decked in blue and yellow. There is Ukrainian art, Ukrainian culture all around the city. Everyone's wearing our flag proudly. I think that means so much to us.
Say Eurovision!
And Liverpool has also felt the benefits. 500,000 people are reported to have come to the city centre during Eurovision.
So many people from abroad have said they didn't realise what a great city it was and how friendly everybody is. Have you had a good time?
So people looking at this around the world will have seen this city in all its glory doing something that it does best. And when they're thinking to invest, when they're thinking to bring an event here, when they're thinking to go to study here, or our kids growing up here who think I can be that, that's why you do things like this.
Liverpool plans to let the legacy of Eurovision ring out. Katie Razzle, BBC News.
The BAFTA Television Awards are getting underway this evening, with the BBC drama The Responder leading the nominations. Our entertainment correspondent Lizo Mazimba is at the Royal Festival Hall, where tonight's ceremony is being held. Lizo.
Yes, this is the night the TV industry comes together to celebrate the best shows of 2022. Now, there are so many police dramas, it can be hard to make one stand out, but The Responder certainly does. It's an intense Liverpool-set story with a mesmerising central performance from Martin Freeman. He's up for Best Actor, the show itself up for Best Drama Series. Just behind a whole range of shows, there's the crime drama Sherwood, there's the new constructed reality format The Traitors, including a nomination for its host Claudia Wilkenman, and then there's the comedy Am I Being Unreasonable, starring Daisy May Cooper and Lenny Rush. He incredibly is just 14 years old, and it could be a great night for Ben Whishaw. He's up for Best Actor for the medical drama This Is Going to Hurt, but he of course also is the voice of Paddington Bear, and he features in the nominations for Most Memorable Moment. Paddington Bear having tea with Her Majesty the Queen ahead of her platinum party at the Palace last summer.
Lizo, thank you. Lizo Mazimba at the BAFTAs. With all the sport now, let's hand over to Lizzie Greenwood-Hughes at the BBC Sports Centre. Hi, Lizzie.
Hello, thank you, Tina. Good evening. Chelsea have won the Women's FA Cup for the third year in a row. They beat Manchester United by a 1-0 in front of a record crowd at Wembley. Our correspondent, Katie Gornall, is there. Katie.
Yes, we've talked about milestones a lot recently in women's football, haven't we? And before a ball had even been kicked, there was another one here as 77,000, a world record for a women's domestic game, watched Chelsea beat Manchester United. Chelsea weren't at their best, but it all made for a very special atmosphere anyway here at Wembley.
The Women's FA Cup final as you've never seen it before, sold out at Wembley. For the fans and for the sport, this was already a moment to celebrate. Inside Wembley was a cauldron of colour. This Chelsea team are no strangers to the big occasion. They're here for the third year in a row. But if there were any nerves for Manchester United in their first major final, they didn't show. 20 seconds was all it took for Leah Galton to turn the ball in. Unfortunately for her, she was offside. United kept up the pressure and Katrin Berger was kept on her toes. While at the other end, Mary Earps was rarely troubled. No chance she'd switch off. Lauren James making her strain every sinew to keep this out. So far for United owner Avram Glazer, this was time well spent. But such is the depth at Chelsea, they have Pernilla Harder in reserve. Her introduction, her pass, changed everything.
Cometh the hour, cometh the sun!
Much to the delight of Sam Kerr. This her 5th goal in 3 FA Cup finals. United gave everything, but there was no time for one final twist, as Emma Hayes' side maintained their dominance of this tournament. And they'll hope this isn't the last trophy they'll lift this season.
So all eyes now turn to the title race, where Chelsea trail Manchester United by just a point in the WSL, but they have a game in hand, so their hopes of the double are still very much alive.
Thank you, Katie. Manchester City have moved a step closer to being crowned this year's Premier League champions. Gundogan was the star of the show, scoring twice as they won 3-0 at Everton. It means City are now just 2 wins away from their 3rd consecutive league title. Second-placed Arsenal need to beat Brighton to stay in the race. They're losing 1-0. Meanwhile, Mauricio Pochettino is set to become the new manager of Chelsea. The former Tottenham boss will join in the summer after what will be the club's worst-performing Premier League season for nearly 2 decades. The Argentine takes over from Frank Lampard, who's in caretaker charge. The lineup for Rugby Union's Premiership final is complete, and it'll be Sale against Saracens in a fortnight's time after Sale beat Leicester 21-13 in their semi-final to reach the Twickenham season finale for the first time in 17 years. And there was an emotional ending to the first Leeds Marathon when Kevin Sinfield carried his friend and former rugby league teammate Rob Burrow over the finishing line after pushing him round the course. Thousands of people took part in the charity event, which was named after Burrow, who has motor neurone disease. That's the sport. Back to you, Tina.
Lizzie, thank you. Well, that's it for now from us. We are back with the late news at 10. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Goodbye for now.
And now the news for the East Midlands. I'm Amy Payne. Good evening. First tonight, a teenage boy has died after being pulled from a river in Leicestershire. The emergency services were called to a stretch of the River Soar by the bridge at Barrow-upon-Soar just after 9 o'clock last night. Police say it was reported 4 teenage boys had entered the water. 3 were rescued and received medical attention, but a 4th was pronounced dead a short time later. Specially trained officers are providing support to the boys' family. Fire chiefs in Derbyshire say the decision to issue body cams to all crews on active duty is the result of an increase in attacks during rescue incidents. The service says its staff